What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode 25, in fact, of 30 Minutes of Hell podcast. We are brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. I am your host, Brandon Baker, joined by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. And we appreciate you guys tuning in to talk some Razorback basketball with us. It has been a relatively slow couple of weeks compared to what we are used to at this time in the off season. But there has been some movement since the last time we talked to each other.
Ooh.
So Cal he's brought two players in so far onto the roster. Slow process. I know that he's talking to a lot more. I think he just operates a little bit more in silence than we're used to. So that's an adjustment period. But he's also announced that he's hiring Kenny Payne to join him on staff at Arkansas, which I think is a huge win. We'll get
Oh
into
yeah.
more about that in just a second. And then we're going to be talking just a little bit of Cal's legacy and kind of what he could do over these next few years at Arkansas, and what he needs to do to boost kind of what he's already built as a personal brand himself, and his own legacy. And so we'll talk about some things and some of our expectations and how things might unfold. But let's get right into it. Like I said, Cal is starting off building his staff a little bit. I think he's got a good idea of the guys that will be with him on staff, but I think they're still waiting on a few um, announcements and a few decisions here and there. First and foremost, like I said, he hired Kenny Payne to be his more than likely his like main assistant to the head coach. Come with him to Arkansas, and that is a huge hire in my opinion. I know that just looking at Payne's recent coaching history, you might be a little turned off by the Louisville years, but it's important to look at what Payne did as Cal's assistant while he was at Kentucky, because the two of them were an elite duo, both in the recruiting trail and on the court. In the 10 years that he was with Cal, they went to seven Elite Eights, four Final Fours, two title games, and won a national championship, as well as four regular season SEC titles. That's a lot of stuff that Arkansas does not have a lot of recently. We're going crazy, loving our two Elite Eights recently, and that's just a 10-year span with Cal and Kenny Payne together. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that type of success this late in either of their careers, but they've proven it. They have a track record, and I'm excited for them to get back together as recruiters and as a coaching staff. So, do you guys have any additional thoughts on Payne joining the staff?
Yeah, not to mention he's got NBA assistant coaching experience too with the Knicks. So just an all around, basketball guy. I would fully expect us to send more kids to the league from Arkansas. That as a kid growing up, that was always something so cool to, whenever an Arkansas guy went to the NBA draft and got drafted in the first round, like it was big, it was exciting. Which it's funny. I'm thinking back to Arkansas guys like Malik Monk and Archie Goodwin, who didn't play for the Razorbacks but played under Calipari and ended up going to the NBA as first round picks. So it's just so exciting from a state standpoint and a fan of the Razorbacks to know, hey, we're going to be sending a lot more guys to the NBA, a lot more like lottery pick guys to the NBA over the next 5 years. So I think Kenny Payne does a lot with that as well.
Yeah, let alone the exciting players that we're going to see at Arkansas. Like
Hmm.
this, very well, these next few years, I think could be the best Arkansas teams we've ever seen put together.
Oh, 100%.
Just talent wise, will they perform that way? Of course, we have no idea. But in terms of just raw talent, these are going to be some of the most exciting teams we've ever seen. And Kenny Payne only adds to that. Like we were pumped to get Coach Cal, but alongside him being Kenny Payne, I mean, really, from what it looks like, just based on these two's performance together, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, a big time recruiter, a lot of connections, a lot in the East Coast too, and that's a basketball area in the East Coast up towards
Oh
New
yeah,
York and all of that. So big time hire. I'm excited to have him on staff for a lot of reasons. And we've already kind of seen some of the effects. Maybe this wasn't all Kenny Payne, but Cal has gotten two commitments to Arkansas for next year so far. Both of them former Kentucky guys, sort of. The first one was Big Z, and that's Zvonimir Ivisic, and he is 7'2", a stretch big kind of unicorn type player that has the athleticism to where he can put the ball on the deck a little bit. He can stretch the floor and hit threes. He's got good timing as a shot blocker. Not an overly strong big man interior presence, but big enough and a high enough basketball IQ to really impact the game in the paint on both sides of the ball, as well as being a stretch shooter, like I mentioned. Super excited to have him. I think that he could be our starting center. I don't think that we've seen anywhere close to the best from Big Z yet. And that just because, I mean, he came into Kentucky halfway through the season last year, and we saw flashes of how good he could be. We saw him dominate a couple of games, some big highlight plays. He shot like 38% from three on the season. Just a lot of good things to like with Big Z. And I'm perfectly happy if he is our starting center. Or even, you could even throw some lineups. He's such a good athlete for his size and such a good shooter. You could even put another center beside him in some lineups, and let him kind of play the fourth spot. So that's a dangerous weapon to have to utilize in certain lineups for Cal. Super excited that he's coming over with Calipari and to be a Razorback next year. What do you guys think about Big Z?
Well, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just gonna say, he's full of potential. I mean, that's all we kind of got to see from him last year is just his potential to be great. Like you mentioned, a couple good games. One specifically that comes to mind would be against Alabama. I think that's like his one highlight tape that he has. But overall, what I saw in a lot of these highlights that he's had is for a 7-footer, he has phenomenal court vision. And having a guy at that height with that good of court vision and a soft touch around the rim, I mean, you surround him with shooters and he's a shooter himself. I mean, he's going to help us out a lot. And I think that's where he's going to put himself above another potential starting center in terms of starting five rotation. Of course, we don't know who else is coming in yet, but that's one high point that I see from him is his court vision at that height. So I'm super excited to see that and how it works with Calipari's offense.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Matt, and y'all really both touched on it. He came in at the 16 game mark, and that first game that he came back against Georgia, he was a fan favorite from the start. And Matt, you mentioned his game against Alabama where he scored 18. He reads the floor extremely well. He rotates well defensively. Like Brandon said, he's not that big presence. He's not going to be a strong paint defender, but he's a great rotator. He reads the floor well defensively and offensively as a passer. I think y'all are both right. I don't think we saw the half of what Big Z can be. And which we'll touch on this later. I would love to see a front court of JQ and Big Z, maybe running the 4 and 5 respectively. That could be a cool stretch lineup where we get Big Z maybe at the 4 spot and a smaller center with JQ, which is crazy because he's 6'10" in himself, but kind of that bigger body down low, and then having Big Z as that stretch 4 guy who runs the pick and pop, runs the high post and gets the quick dump downs. We saw so many behind the backs and no look passes from him this season in a short season. So I can't wait to see what he does healthy in a potential starting role with the Razorbacks. I think he'll be incredible.
Yeah, I think it's very possible that they already have their starting center, that he could be the guy. And of course, that depends. We don't know who all Cal is talking to in the transfer portal and everything else, but definitely a big part to next year's team. Very excited and excited to see him get a full off season to come and work with the team. Because like we've been saying, not only does it affect you showing up halfway through the season, but a lot of these guys were with the team long before the season started. They're with Cal, they're working together with each other and building, a relationship and chemistry with their team for months before the actual season starts. And Z didn't get that last year. So I'm excited to see what he can do with a full summer under his belt and developing. And then the other guy that actually just committed moments before this recording, 5-star former Kentucky commit, McDonald's All-American, Carter Knox, big 6'5", 6'6", small forward, just a great athlete, good length on the wing, can really score from all 3 levels. But I mean, he's just a really good, strong slasher. Like he can attack the rim already at the collegiate level. And I think that's rare sometimes in high school guys coming up to college. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why he is a 5-star, because he's ready physically to be that kind of guy and attacking the paint. But he can also shoot. He's got a pretty stroke. knows when to put the ball on the deck, knows when to catch and shoot, high basketball IQ. He's the younger brother of NBA forward Kevin Knox. So just a big pickup. He's one of the freshmen. There's a lot of freshmen that decommitted from Kentucky when Cal came over here, and we're going to get into those a little bit more here in a minute. But Carter Knox is one of the guys that I was all about. I really hoped that he would follow Cal to Arkansas because I'm really excited about his potential. I mean, this is a pro, man. I mean, he's going to be a pro. To what level, I don't know, but I think like Moses Moody might be like his floor. Like I think that's where he starts, and then his potential is sky high from there, which is crazy. So,
Yeah.
what do you guys think about Carter?
Yeah, so my three guys coming into this year were Big Z, Knox, and Quintance. So the fact that we already got two of my primary three is super exciting. I'm with you, Brandon. I think the sky's the limit for Knox. He's going to be a super exciting scorer. He averaged 22 points per game last season, and he averaged nearly three pointers a game last season. So I think what I saw was he hit 81 threes over 30 games, which is, really good shooting. But I can see him being our go-to bucket getter on next year's squad, which is saying a lot with all the potential talent that the Hogs have lined up. But with his athleticism and his shooting touch, he's going to be a great offensive player for us.
Yeah, and one thing we haven't really touched on. I mean, I could talk all day about how good of an offensive player he is, but his defense, just with his athleticism and his length, is going to be great. And as long as he fully commits, I mean, of course, effort is half of defense. So as long as he fully commits to defense, he's going to be good on both ends of the floor. This guy has a making of a superstar. Like Brandon said, he is built physically for the collegiate level, if not the pro level. I mean, one thing I always had a problem with is I see our guys that these last few years, they come in and I'm like, man, if he could just put on some size, if he could just put on a little bit of muscle mass, if he can eat a little bit more food, whatever it may be, they'd be phenomenal. They'd be that much better. And this guy, he looks like he's ready. And I'm excited. He's probably one of the most excited, like one that I'm the most excited to watch. But of course, we only have two. So there's not much room there. But I'm super pumped with him. And I'm super pumped to see what kind of star he can become, not only in the college level, but beyond.
Yeah, and a tweet from Draft Express, which is, by the way, a Twitter account looking at future draft prospects and future pros. Crazy tweet that illustrates kind of what we're talking about. I think Joey touched on a couple of these stats, but Knox is the first player in Nike EYBL history to lead the 15U, 16U, and 17U age groups in per minute scoring in 3 consecutive summers ever. He made 83s over a 30-game season with Overtime Elite this year, averaging 22 a game, like Joey said. So, I mean, if that doesn't tell you what kind of scorer he is, the type of guys that go to that Nike that program over the summer, those are pros. I mean, you can go back and look at some of the dudes that have been through that program and done some of the stuff even at Overtime Elite. It's elite players, and for him to be the first to do something like that in terms of scoring, it gets me excited. I'm ready to watch him come play in college. I think that he's going to be a great player.
Yeah.
So.
And I think he's got a pretty close relationship with Kenny Payne as well. I think I saw a quote from him that said something about Cal telling him, "Hey, let's make you a pro." So he was going to follow Cal wherever he went. It was just a matter of time. So super excited to have Knox on the squad. I think he's going to be a dude this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we're going to get into a couple of the other guys that were committed to Cal at Kentucky. 4 have decommitted and have not announced where they're going next, and we'll get into their names and kind of our thoughts on some of them. But first, we're going to take a quick break for some ads, and we will be right back.
The best month of the year is here, which is why you need to know that we are partnered with BetMGM. We'll be using BetMGM lines for making all of our picks and predictions, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your hard-earned money to get it. This is what you have to do to make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the rest of the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and the thing that I love the most, a nice little parlay boost, as well as a ridiculous array of prop bets for anything that you could possibly imagine betting on. From odds on getting to the Final Four to national championship futures, I'm calling it right now. BetMGM is the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app. Use that code FIELD and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the pod in any podcast app. Like and share the YouTube videos that you enjoy. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
All right, so Carter Knox follows Calipari to Arkansas, but what about the other 4 guys that maybe aren't hanging around Kentucky that were committed to Cal? You've got a couple more 5 stars and then some more 4 stars that are kind of on the border. Some sites, like maybe one of the 3 will have them as a 5-star or whatnot, but 4 really good players. And we're going to get into all 4 of them right now, talking about kind of what they bring and how excited we would be if they came to Arkansas. Starting it off with Jaden Quaintance. I think he was the highest rated recruit in Cal's class when he was at Kentucky. And he's currently kind of on the fence. It feels like he's visiting Louisville, and he's still got Arkansas high up on his list. I think he, like kind of Joey said about Knox, has a really good relationship with Cal. So I think Arkansas is very firmly in the mix with him. But a big 6'10" freak athlete, only going to be 16 years old next year. So he's got 2 years at least in college. A big body, has a decent touch from the mid-range, even stretching a little bit out, but just a monster. Tries to dunk every chance he gets in the paint. The type of big guy, the big dominant rebounding beast that we really want to see in the paint next year, especially alongside someone like Big Z, who is more of that floor stretching and finesse kind of player. So Quaintance would be fantastic, I think. I think he's probably number 1 on my list of guys that I would like to have out of these 4 just incoming freshman recruits. What are y'all's thoughts on JQ?
Yeah, I mean, athlete. That guy is an athlete. He, at that size, man, you just don't see very many people like him. And it just blows my mind how young these guys are getting and are just like grown men. And I'm super pumped. Like Joey mentioned, that front court, that the potential front court that we can have with him is...
It's nasty.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it makes me speechless.
Lost words,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, it could be really, really, really good, and all that we would need is, can you give me a point guard that can feed these guys?
Yeah.
I mean, oh, I want him. I want him bad. I want a lot of these guys, but if I had to pick one out of most of them, it's him. I mean, he could be dominant.
Yeah. I agree completely, Matt. He was, I think I mentioned 2 episodes ago, whenever we announced that Coach Cal was coming to the U of A, I think I said that Quaintance was my number 1 as well. But just the fact that he has to stay in college. There's no way around. He has to stay in college for 2 years. He's only going to get bigger. He's only going to get better. If we can retain a guy like that for 2 straight years, his growth is going to be incredible. So that's what I'm most excited about for, a guy like Calipari, who's already, a Hall of Fame coach, to have 2 years with a guy like that is, it's going to do a lot for him as a player and for the Razorbacks as a program. So that's what I'm most looking forward to.
All right. Up next is Boogie Fland. Speaking of that point guard, Matt, maybe not a true facilitator like you might be talking about to get some of these other guys involved, but just so smooth with the ball in his hands, man.
Mm-hmm.
The dude can handle the ball, can score the ball, can shoot, can throw lobs to the rim. I mean, he's a hooper. I mean, he can play all over the court as a 1 or a 2, like that point guard, combo guard role. Would be very excited to get Boogie on board too. Just could maybe not as a true freshman, he might not lead his team in scoring, but he has that type of potential. He very well could come in and be that guy that just dicing up defenses and people don't have an answer for him attacking and scoring from the outside, especially if he's got a good squad around him. But very very excited at the prospect of him coming to Arkansas, and I think that they stand in a very good spot currently for Boogie. I think they're the leaders in the clubhouse still. I think kind of like the whole thing. He's still got a good relationship with Cal, but nothing is set in stone for sure. I know that all four of these guys are hearing out offers from other schools and seeing what's best for them. But I like where Arkansas stands with Boogie right now.
So don't hear what I'm not saying about Boogie. I think he's a terrific player. I think he's a terrific scorer, offensive player. Him and Knox could be dirty offensively, but he is one of those guys who takes tough shots. He can go cold. You know, he's been described as inefficient at times. So we need to have someone off the bench who can come out as a playmaker for when those times do arise. He reminds me a little bit of Battle, but without the thought to draw fouls. You know, kind of his scouting report is he's a floater range type guy. He extends the floor and shoots threes. You know, he's not a guy that will go and body to body, you know, get somebody under the rim. You know, one of his concerns is his strength. So he's definitely a finesse type of player, like you mentioned, Brandon. So I do want to say that, you know, we need a strong point guard who can be a facilitator and someone who can go draw fouls alongside Boogie. I feel like but I do think that he would be a great player, you know, to be our starting point guard.
Yeah, and thinking back to Cal's previous teams, I mean, it is not, you can't put it past him to put somebody like Fland in a sixth man position. I mean, look at Devin Booker. Devin
That's
Booker.
true.
Look
Yeah.
at his two freshmen this year. He had Dillingham and Reed both
Reed
come out.
Shepard, yeah.
I mean, it's this is not uncommon, and he knows the importance of being a facilitator and having a strong sixth man coming off the bench. And of course, Devin Booker went pro, and of course, he's a superstar now. I mean,
Yes,
you
but
know,
yeah, but
I'm
no,
not a big fan of Devin Booker.
100%. No, me neither. But
Yeah.
that's beside the point.
Right.
We don't know what Cal has already promised Boogie. You know,
True.
it could have been a situation where he said, "Hey, you're my guy. Like, you're going to be the starting point guard." And which, I mean, he's a high recruit coming out of high school, so you know it wouldn't be uncommon for a coach to promise a starting position to a guy like that. So that would be my only concern there, but very possible. You could be completely right that he assumes that 6-man role and just Beezer is our guy to come out and, you know, give us 15 a game off the bench.
I mean, and another thing though, like, of course, I don't know how college coaches recruit. I feel like I kind of had an idea of how Musselman did, and I feel like Musselman may have been one of those that promised things. But I feel like Cal's hopefully a little bit smarter than that, because it's hard to promise things when you don't have a team, you know. But he may have said that to Kentucky when he was at Kentucky.
Yes.
So
The fact that he did what he did this year with Reed Shepard and Rob Dillingham makes me think that he's going to do what he feels best in terms of the lineup and rotation kind of things. And I've even seen some Kentucky fans talk about that maybe Cal was a little stubborn to not start one of those guys. So maybe it is kind of exactly the same thing. Maybe he promised his actual starters minutes, and that's why he had to bring Dillingham and Reed Shepard off the bench. But I do think that Boogie is perfect for that 6-man role. And and you know, this is the last 5 years has been Muss ball, but Muss has loved that guy that comes off the bench, that JD Notte, Ricky Council, that type of guy that comes off the bench and gives you flurries of points. And I think all college coaches love to have that type of guy. And I think Boogie would thrive in that role. So definitely a big possibility there for him. Another one that I feel pretty good about coming with Cal to Arkansas. Again, we'll have to wait and see, but I'm feeling pretty confident. Billy Rich, another big wing player, more of a raw athlete than someone like Carter Knox. Not quite the pure scorer, but a physical athlete, loves getting downhill into the paint. Is becoming more of a facilitator. Kind of, I think the game is starting to slow down a little bit for him, and he's starting to see things a little clearer as he plays more. But definitely we need to work on that outside touch if he does end up at Arkansas. But definitely a good type of wing player, bench player that I would love to have. He's one of those guys that's a 4-star. I think one of the sites has him as a 5-star, but he's right there on the fringe of being in between 4 and 5. And but like, yeah, a big 6'6" swing guy, just the kind of guy that I talked about before all this Calipari stuff, that I love to have a big defensive minded. It's okay if he's not a pure scorer, a pure shooter. He can get his points in other ways as long as he can contribute on the defensive side of the ball as a rebounder, can handle the ball enough to where he's not a liability on the court. And I think Billy is all of those things. And I don't think that he would have too much weight on his shoulders if he were to come somewhere like, if he were to follow Cal to Arkansas, depending on who else we can get on the roster ahead of him, obviously. But I would be excited at the prospect of Billy Richmond as well. You guys have any other thoughts on him?
I think you nailed it. I think him and Quaintance are friends, so that could be a little, not necessarily a decider, but maybe a swing.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I'm excited for anybody right now. to be fair, I'm excited to actually see these 4-stars. Which, I mean, these aren't like your middle level 4-stars, but these guys actually get developed. I feel like in the past you get a 4-star in Arkansas, and we didn't really develop them. They usually transferred out, or if they were ready to play, they get good minutes. But I'm excited to see this duo of Payne and Calipari really develop these guys at the 4-star level. Maybe they're not quite ready to start or get a ton of minutes in collegiate level ball, but they'll develop to the point where, shoot, we'll use them in March. So I think he's one of those guys.
And Brandon, you may have said this already. Is Richmond, is he like the top 4-star recruit? Like he's fringe 5-star. He's like one of the top 4-stars.
Yeah, he is. I don't have all of the rankings pulled up right in front of me. I did some research on him all the other day, and I think Richmond was like, I think on ESPN site, he was like the highest 4-star or something along those lines.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. And then the last one that we want to touch on real quick, Somto Cyril. He's the dude that's just a freak athlete, the big 6'10" kid that we talked about a highlight of his where he put his whole elbow in the rim on a fast break the other day. He's probably one of the ones that I'm least confident in right now. Not that Arkansas isn't in the mix, but I could definitely see him exploring other options. I could see him. I've heard some chatter about this, not even going to college, about him taking a pro route in preparation of the NBA draft. So that's a real possibility with him, I think. But would love to have him. I mean, depth at the forward center position would be great, but not a lot else to say about him right now, though.
Yeah. I don't know how, I guess, reliable. I'm sure it wasn't very reliable, but I did see a tweet. I don't remember, of course, who tweeted it, but they said that they were talking about him and Knox being a package deal. I don't know, because they, of course, they played on Overtime Elite together, and so if you watch any of Knox's highlights, you're going to see him in there. So it'll be interesting to see if that had any meat to it, or if it was just a prediction because they may be friends.
Real quick, I want to throw out 3 other potential transfers to keep your eye on. Those were all 4-star or 5-star incoming freshmen that were committed to Cal. But some other guys to keep your eye on as we continue through portal season. Jonas Adu from Tennessee, Jonell Davis from Florida Atlantic. Both of those guys would be fantastic experienced transfers that could come in. And I do believe that Arkansas is heavily in the mix for both. I don't know. I'm not predicting one way or the other, but I think that, and it's hard to say right now because I've said it before, we're still getting used to how Cal operates. There's been a couple guys that we'll see a commitment tweet from somebody and they'll be like, they chose, Michigan over Arkansas and Indiana. And I'm just like, I didn't even know we were talking to that dude until they told us we were one of the finalists after the fact. So I think Cal very much operates in silence, where Muss is kind of putting things on billboards for people to see sometimes. But those 2 would be huge transfers that I think Arkansas stands a good chance with. And then the third guy I wanted to talk about was actually DJ Wagner, one of Cal's guards last year at Kentucky. Had a relatively underwhelming freshman season, averaged only 10 points a game, shot right around 30% from 3. But I think he's the type of player that, because he's sticking around in college, he didn't try to force it and make that leap to go pro. I would be very interested to see his development as a sophomore. I'm not expecting him to come out and be a superstar by any means, but he averaged 3.3 assists per game as a true freshman in the SEC. you can develop that and take just a one step forward as a sophomore. That's plenty, along with some other
Oh
really
yeah.
good players alongside you. So definitely one to watch if he does follow Cal to Arkansas, but I would be excited by that prospect as well. All right, so we're going to get into some hard-hitting questions right here about Cal's legacy and what these next few years at Arkansas looks like. But first, we're going to take one more quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, let's dive straight into it, guys. I just want to pose one question, and then we'll branch off of this and have some more discussion. But right off the top, what does Cal need to do in his tenure at Arkansas, whether that's 5 years, 8 years, whatever, to improve upon his legacy that he has already built?
Matt, let's hear what you have to say on this one.
All right. So the crazy thing is when you have a coach like Cal, I mean, what hasn't he done, right? So what hasn't he done? And of course, the big thing that he can do is, we can't really say revive this program, but turn it into something that it hasn't seen either in a long time or ever before. I mean, when's the last time we had, 5 lottery picks or whatever he was doing at Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
And when's the last time we've made a national championship? I mean,
Final Four. Yeah.
these are things that we haven't seen in a long time. And if there's a coach that was ever available, this is the one to do it. And I think making this program like he made Memphis and Kentucky and now, of course, Arkansas, if he can do that again, that just further proves how great he is and further strengthens his legacy as a coach.
Yeah, I think just writing off of something you said there, I saw a tweet or somebody say the other day that must woke the sleeping giant that is Arkansas, and now it's time for it to eat. And I thought that was a good way to putting
Ooh,
it.
chills.
Chills, yeah. Well, Cal said that Arkansas is a blue blood, so I want him to back that statement up. I think that he at least needs a Final Four appearance in the next 5 years to improve his legacy.
Oh yeah.
What does that do for his legacy if he does get to that Final Four? Because he's done so much already.
I think multiple Final Four appearances or a championship, I think that cements his name. That brings him to the level of Roy Williams, Calhoun, Bobby Knight. I think he's a top 10 coach in college basketball history. If he pulls multiple Final Fours or a championship out of these next 5 years, I really think that it does.
I may say it even kind of reignites his legacy if he makes a Final Four. I mean, he's kind of been down low. I mean, first round exit, second round exit. This kind of will spark it a little bit more. And I think this move just to Arkansas has reignited the fire in him. Like he has a true desire. Like, I want to make this program great.
He's went a long time without tournament success. So I mean, if he makes the Elite Eight, great. That does a lot for his legacy. But to really go up there as one of the all-time greats, legendary status, he needs at least a Final Four appearance. Honestly, he probably needs 2 or a championship
Give him a
to
championship,
really.
and I'd put him up there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm hoping for this next season might be an outlier because he's having to start from scratch, but I'm hoping for consistent second weekend appearances in the tournament. And from there, it's so hard to win in the tournament. So you just have to give yourself a chance, a shot, right?
Mhm.
Position yourself in a good spot where you are a higher seed. You're getting to play that 8 or 9 seed in the second round. You're giving yourself a chance to get to that Final Four. It doesn't always happen. I mean, obviously, we've seen it. I think we were part of the reason why it didn't happen for some schools over the last 2 or 3 years. Taking out 1 seed Gonzaga, 1 seed Kansas. Anything can happen. It's hard to win a tournament. So, it's hard to hold against him having some upsets, but I want to see us consistently put ourselves back in a good position to then see what happens, make a run. And that's doing good in the SEC, competing for SEC titles. It's not as much about his legacy, winning the SEC regular season or SEC championship tournament, anything like that, but competing in the SEC and being amongst the top 2 or 3 teams in the SEC year after year after year getting a top 4 seed or so in the NCAA tournament. That's the kind of stuff that I'm hoping for Arkansas. And then I think you guys hit the nail on the head with Calipari specifically. He's got to have the success. He's got to back up his statements about being a blue blood and back up his decision to come here. I don't think he comes here if he doesn't think he can win.
Yeah.
He's proving already that he can bring his recruits with him here, but he doesn't come to Arkansas just for the thought of money and keep it so he can keep getting his players. He thinks he can win here. I think he can too. I think must prove that you can win here, and I think Cal is going to take that to another level. So,
Yeah.
But I think you guys nailed it.
I also want to say, obviously, he feels that way to come from an SEC school to an SEC school. I mean, it's going to be a fun rivalry.
And I don't think it's too far to say. I mean, I get they starting from scratch, but this is a Hall of Fame coach. I think we still have a chance to make any one of these runs that we just talked about, Elite Eight, Final Four, even a championship with him as the head hog. So I don't think it's too far to just say, no, we're not doing it this year, but there's always a chance.
Yeah. How fun it is to end on positive notes after the season we just had, guys.
I know
it's fun to talk about now. I'm ready to see more of the roster and more of the team. But I trust that Cal is working in his process, even though a lot of it seems to be kind of in silence. But we'll get some guys together. I think Matt's right. We're going to have a good enough team to make some noise, and I think a good enough foundation moving forward to really see what he can do over the next couple of years. But that's all we have to talk about today. As always, we appreciate you guys tuning in to talk some Razorback basketball with us. Reminder, we're brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your stuff under 30 Minutes of Hell. I have been your host, Brandon Baker, joined by Joey Jackson and Matt Jackson. And as always, go Hogs.
Thanks, y'all.